Executive Summary. Achieving True Wealth, Health and Happiness. Chapter Summary. Perspective of yourself and the world are prerequisites for meaning and happiness. Above all, your relations are what define you and matter most. Points without relations aren't really points at all. That tenet holds in foundational physics as well as for conscious entities. What are you? The body is a pattern recognition system, fine-tuned for survival. It rewards itself when it's engaged in moving away from annihilation and toward survival. When you're on social media, the brain still thinks you're alone. What do you need? Food, sleep, and exercise are basically all there is and all you need. Well, that and some company. Actually, social context and relationships are more important than your health. Humans are deeply social, and since we rose up on our hind legs, we have inherited a deadly fear of being left alone on the savannah to face certain death. Without our fellow humans, our tribe, we are nothing. Loneliness soon turns into depression, and first spiritual and eventual bodily death. When I was young and ignorant, I used to say, every man is an island. Luckily, I grew to realize no man can be totally independent for long without ceasing to be much more than an empty shell. As much as loving and losing hurts, belonging, and thus risking loss, is paramount. Whether belonging to a family, a partner, or a tribe, meaningful connections are more important than living. If your use of technology doesn't lead to more quality hours of socializing in real life, more sleep, and more increased heartbeat activity, you are using it wrong. What do you want? You want to live happily, fully, and you want to live on for another day. Or through your kids, or possibly through technological advancements leading up to the technological singularity and immortality. Humans also crave company. Those that didn't became extinct, as they were easy prey. So, being social is hardwired, more so than most might think, until they find themselves truly alone. I used to be one of them, enjoying my voluntary solitude, which is something wholly different from being alone, rejected, abandoned. In order to find food, friends, and mates, you have to analyze the world and your place in it, using the brain's powerful pattern recognition abilities for knowing what to evade and what and whom to approach or investigate. The eternal question of fight, flight, or on the deepness and importance of patterns. Due to their unparalleled survival value, identifying and pursuing useful patterns are two of the most deeply rewarding activities conceivable. When the body is about to get what it needs, the brain rewards itself with powerful neuronal chemicals and firing patterns. Unfortunately, that feeling fades pretty quickly, leaving you craving more. The trick to achieve sustained meaning and happiness is choosing naturally moving targets. Actually, not targets at all, but processes. This book deals with, on the one hand, how to identify your inner wishes, and on the other, how to maximize your opportunities to explore and attain those for maximum perceived lifetime utility. If you are depressed or in pain, you are not weak or broken. You are a human being with unmet needs. Happiness through perspective. Did you know that the number one reason people aren't satisfied with their lives is that they don't know themselves or their actual desires? They go chasing after other people's dreams and wonder why they end up feeling empty and miserable. These, the deprived, keep copying whatever behavior is en vogue, without questioning if it's applicable to their particular situation. It's as if they've had raw It's as if they had raw cockroaches for dinner every day without ever thinking about trying boiled lobster with garlic and parsley butter. In addition, people tend to celebrate too rarely, singling out just a few achievements, somehow by some arbitrary yardstick deemed important and life-altering. By whose standards? Who knows? But hardly their own, more likely some faceless crowds. The rational thing to do is to continuously appreciate one's adherence to inherently meaningful processes. It doesn't even matter if you succeed, since the process in itself is meaningful. That way, you get to celebrate all the time, while forever dodging the dreaded vacuum of a long-coveted target achieved with nothing new in your sights. Without getting too far ahead of the narrative, there exists a recipe for understanding, for joy and success, for fulfillment, for a feeling of purpose and meaning. It's having the right, ever-widening and expanding perspective, in particular of yourself. Care and dare to lose. Do you sometimes wonder why it seems you are always just in maintenance mode and never really get anywhere? Why you aren't achieving enough? Why you're feeling empty and useless despite your objective accomplishments? Why you're neither adventurous nor feeling safe and at ease? The bad but comforting news is you are not alone. The good news is there are remedies to feeling lost, stuck, or disconnected. If you want to become happy or fulfilled, self-actualized, you need to identify your own primary drivers. Then use a number of my suggested tools, methods, mental representations, and strategies to design a process that's both rewarding in itself and effective in getting you toward your end goals, thus providing the basis for purpose and meaning. You have to care enough to connect and dare to fail and lose that connection. As much as it hurt losing my life companion Ronja, my dog, it was loving her without compromise that provided meaning to my life as a mid-40s financially independent retiree. Whore village, selling yourself for admiration. It's all too easy to think our survival of the fittest heritage, coupled with today's consumerist society, means we are forever doomed to compete and consume ourselves to death. My own journey from poor to rich, from unassuming to conspicuous and back, however, shows it is possible to be both effective at creating materialistic success and capable of enjoying it without futilely, endlessly striving for more. For a while, though, I lost my perspective completely in Whore Village, raining money on stuff and parties to be somebody in the eyes of strangers. Okay, let's back up a little. I came from a background of poverty, without any contacts, prospects, or ambition. Paradoxically, that very slothy constitution made me study ahead in primary school in order to avoid having to raise my hand in class to answer questions, while eliminating the risk of being put on the spot not knowing. All I wanted was to avoid relating to others, so I could focus on my coding and gaming. How painfully clear it is in retrospect that I shun true connections to compensate for my trifecta of traumatic losses that occurred before I even turned 10 years old. Eventually, my particular variation of teenage antics, that is, being the perfect student, resulted in outstanding grades. Thus, on the one hand, my plan was to live on welfare, but on the other, I happened to have created the freedom to choose any education I wanted. Higher education is completely free in Sweden, except for the textbooks. So, all you have to do to climb socially in Sweden is study hard. Rich parents are neither necessary nor enough. A throw of the dice at the last moment puts me in the unlikely place of the nation's most prestigious business school, the Stockholm School of Economics, SSE. I still to this day, more than 30 years later, always look at the huge, massive doors of the main entrance with a mixture of relief, gratitude, and pride. I got away. I got through. I made it. I just as well could not have. From SSE, I went on to soon become a nationally top-ranked financial analyst, and about a decade after that received an extremely rare award for our hedge fund's achievements. After 15 years as an analyst, partner, portfolio manager, and managing director of that billion-dollar hedge fund, I realized happiness resided outside the typical status, fame, and money tripler. I consequently retired and sold my bright yellow Lamborghini convertible, which in turn had been a replacement for a Ferrari convertible. I told you, I used to be materialistic. I thus went from being a poor and a social child to a rich and powerful hedge fund dollar multimillionaire, basking in other people's admiration for my conspicuous consumption and what I might get them. It all was a dangerous, soul-sucking and dementorious detour to Whore Village. However, I seem to need it to gain a deeper insight in who I am at the core and what's meaningful to me. I'm not saying you shouldn't avoid a visit there at all cost, but at least do yourself a favor and pay attention to if that is where your time on earth is most well spent, and get out as soon as you realized it isn't. The Path Out of Whore Village. From this book, you can expect my pragmatic advice on financial, physical, and mental health. It's all based on personal errors, failures, hits and misses. Some of my favorite guidelines include how long is a piece of string, aim low, convexity, and Wu Wei. Personal anecdotes and straightforward practical tips go with them for proof of concept, explanation, and calls to action. An autobiographic undergrowth ties it all together, like sprawling mycelium. However, don't worry, the book is not at all about me. It's about how mushrooming ideas spawned by my experiences can inspire you to get the most out of life, whether the object is worldly success or inner serenity. Summary. My tip to you is to explore your inner workings and their intersection with your environment to find your purpose and meaning.